People said she was just the receptionist, but why did the CEO always stop by her desk before he went into meetings? Why did he talk to her like an equal, while others barely said her name? Let us know in the comments section below. Jada Norwood didn't need the title to know her worth. Her fingers danced across the keyboard with silent mastery, eyes flicking up just in time to greet the new VP of Marketing with a smile as forced as it was flawless. Another exec who wouldn't remember her name by lunchtime. Jada wasn't surprised. She'd learned long ago that the ones who wore titles, like armor, rarely noticed the woman who handed them their badges. Behind the polished desk she sat poised, her curly hair tucked into a neat bun, a muted navy blouse pressed to perfection. It was the kind of look that said, professional, but not too ambitious. Never too flashy, never threatening. 18 years taught her how to blend in just right, pleasant enough to be liked, forgettable enough to be ignored. Except by him, Richard Ellison didn't walk. He glided, calm, white, and silver-hathed, the kind of man who looked like he was born wearing a tailored suit. Everyone at Halston Co. treated him like a legend. Jada treated him like a man who asked for extra sugar in his coffee but told everyone else he drank it black. He liked control. He also liked truth. That's why he always stopped at her desk first. "Jada," Richard said that morning, dropping his leather briefcase beside her chair. "Tell me again why we hired that buffoon in legal." Jada didn't skip a beat. "Because he plays squash with Melissa Vance and graduated from Yale." Richard snorted. "Right. Useless, but elite." Their eyes met for a split second, just long enough for her to see it again. That flicker. The one that always made her feel like she wasn't invisible to everyone. But then, as quickly as it came, it passed. He grabbed his briefcase and moved on, like always. The morning rush swept in behind him. Phones rang, elevators dinged, people bustled past her, oblivious. Melissa Vance was the worst of them. She wasn't just ambitious, she drenched in it. From her stiletto heels that clicked like gunfire to the way she turned corners like she was storming Normandy. Melissa made sure you felt her presence before she said a word, and when she did speak, it was with that cold, bright tone reserved for baristas, Uber drivers, and, of course, receptionists. "Jada, could you let it know the printer in my office jammed again?" Melissa didn't stop walking. She didn't even turn her head. Jada pressed the intercom. Melissa's printer's jammed. Again." Terrell's voice crackled back. "Tell her to stop overloading it with paper like she's feeding a starving beast." Jada smiled. "I'll let her know." But she wouldn't. Melissa didn't want real answers. She wanted obedience. She'd been clawing her way up the ranks for years, sharpening her resume with buzzwords and burying bodies, metaphorically speaking. Everyone expected her to replace Richard once he retired. Melissa expected it too. But that wasn't what Richard had in mind. Not that Jada knew that yet. At 11:17 a.m., the phones stopped ringing. Just like that. Silence blanketed the floor as an emergency alert pinged on every desktop. A message from Richard's office. "Mandatory town hall meeting. Atrium. Noon." Jada leaned back slightly. A buzz stirred in the pit of her stomach. It wasn't fear. It wasn't excitement, either. It was something stranger. Like the moment before a key clicks into place. Something was happening. Across the floor, Melissa turned slowly toward her office door, lips pressed tight, brow furrowed. Something about the look in her eyes, she didn't know either. At 12 o'clock sharp, the atrium filled like a theater. Jada stood at the very back, behind the last row of folding chairs, arms crossed lightly, her badge still clipped to her blouse, even though no one would ask her to scan it. Richard stood in front of a mic, his posture straighter than usual. This wasn't a man saying goodbye. It was a man making an announcement. "I've spent nearly 4 decades building this company," he said, And it's time I pass the baton to someone who understands not just profit, but people. Someone who's been listening when no one else was. Someone who's helped this company grow in quiet, incredible ways. Melissa took one step forward, already smiling. Richard's eyes skipped past her. Jada felt at his gaze. Just a second. But it was enough to make her breath catch in her throat. Then he looked back at the crowd and said, "I'll introduce my successor at my farewell ceremony this Friday." A wave of murmurs rolled across the room. Melissa's smile faltered. Back at her desk, Jenna sat down slowly. Her hands trembled slightly, but not from nerves. For the first time in 18 years, she wasn't invisible. And Friday was coming. Jada Norwood didn't need confirmation. She felt the shift the moment it happened. People had always looked past her. Now they were looking through her, searching for answers she wasn't giving. The shift in the office air was subtle but unmistakable, like the second before a thunderstorm, thick, still, dangerous. And for the first time, she wasn't just a part of the background. She was the quiet center of a gathering storm. By Wednesday morning, the office had turned into a stage of whispers and tight smiles. Executives passed one another with cautious greetings. Nobody dared say what they were thinking, but their eyes betrayed them. Something was off. Something was wrong. And somehow, it had everything to do with the woman at the front desk. "Morning, Jada." It was Terrell again, his voice lower than usual as he set his coffee on her desk. He didn't lean too close, didn't want to startle her, but his eyes scanned her face, searching for a clue, an unspoken truth. "Itty," she said with a small smile. "You good?" he asked. "I'm always good," she replied, same answer as always, but this time the tone was clipped, the smile tight. He nodded once, slowly. "That meeting, it rattled folks." "I noticed. You think it's going to be Melissa?" Jada looked down, pretending to adjust her keyboard tray. "Everyone thinks it's going to be Melissa." Terrell studied her a moment, lips pressed together. Then he leaned in just a bit, his voice softer now. "But you don't." She looked up, her eyes locked with his, quiet, steady. "No." And then the elevator dinged behind him. Melissa Vance strode out in a sharp ashgrass suit that looked like it had been tailored to her soul, precise, unyielding, and 3 shades colder than necessary. She didn't look at Jada. She never did unless she needed something, but today she slowed just slightly at the desk. Not enough to make a scene, just enough to notice. "Morning, Jada," she said, voice dipped in honey, layered in warning. "Morning," Jada replied evenly, without rising from her seat. Melissa continued walking, but the glance over her shoulder, quick and razor-sharp, cut deep enough to register. "She knows," Terrell whispered. "Doesn't matter," Jada murmured. "She thinks knowing something is the same as controlling it." That afternoon the board arrived. It wasn't scheduled, and it wasn't subtle. Town cars pulled up to the glass entrance one after the other. Suits with stiff faces and steel-gay hair walked in with clipboards and polite nods. Jada greeted each of them as she always did, calm, cordial, invisible. Until Charles Linwood, board chairman, East Coast Division, paused in front of her desk. He was in his 60s, with heavy glasses and a smile that rarely reached his eyes. Today was no exception. "Miss Norwood," he said, voice smooth. "Still holding down the front lines, I see." "Always," she replied. He leaned forward a little, voice dropping just a notch. "I hear congratulations may be in order." Jada didn't flinch. "Then you must be hearing things." Linwood chuckled. "That's the thing, Miss Norwood. The walls in this place are glass, but the whispers, they're made of stone." He moved on without another word. Behind him, 2 younger board members exchanged a glance and a slight nod in her direction. She saw it, logged it, said nothing. By evening, The office looked like the eye of a storm. Quiet, tense. Melissa called an emergency strategy meeting, only VPs and above. An hour in, the glass conference room lit up with flickering slides and tight expressions. Charts. Projections. Jada watched it unfold from her desk without a word. Terrell passed by again on his way out, eyes flicking toward the glass. Looks like the sharks are circling. They smell blood, she replied. You think it's yours? No, Jada said, her voice cool as steel. But they're hoping it is. That night she stayed late, not because she had to, because she needed to. When the lights were off on most of the floor and the hum of the vending machine was the loudest sound in the building, Jada logged into the server. Not with a stolen password, with her own, one she'd been granted 5 years ago, unofficially, by Richard himself. I trust you to keep your eyes on things, he'd said. And she had. Payroll audits, vendor contracts, procurement loopholes. She didn't just file reports. She rewrote them, quietly, efficiently, and always under his radar, until the radar became hers. She opened a folder labeled Legacy. Inside were notes, memos, and strategy plans, some with her own handwriting in the margins. Richard hadn't just mentored her, he'd prepared her. Don't waste time trying to be liked, one memo said in bold ink. Be undeniable. She stared at the screen for a long moment before closing the folder. Jada didn't need to see any more. The next morning she came in 20 minutes earlier than usual, a rare move, enough to make people notice. By 8:15, there were already murmurs. Did you see her outfit today? Who wears heels like that at the front desk? Something's happening. She didn't respond to any of it. By noon, Melissa called her into her office. You wanted to see me? Jada asked, stepping in with the grace of a seasoned performer. Melissa stood behind her desk, arms folded, expression unreadable. You've been here a long time, she began. Almost 2 decades. 18 years, Jada confirmed. That's loyalty, Melissa said, nodding. A dying trait, really. I respect that. Jada waited. But let's be clear, Melissa continued, stepping closer. If you're planning to make some kind of move at Friday's ceremony, don't. You're smart, I'll give you that, but don't mistake kindness from Richard as endorsement. The board won't stand for it. I won't stand for it. Jada tilted her head slightly. I appreciate the warning, she said, but I didn't ask for your permission. She turned and walked out before Melissa could respond. And for the first time in her career, Melissa had no idea what to say. Because for the first time, she didn't feel in control. And Jada Norwood? She wasn't just holding down the front desk anymore. She was walking through the front door of power. The energy inside the atrium was thick, so thick it felt like it was pressing down on every shoulder, creeping into every collar, pooling at the base of every nervous spine. The rows of gold folding chairs had been arranged in perfect lines, the Halston Co logo glinting from the massive digital screens overhead. On stage, a modest podium, a velvet drape, and an aura of finality. It wasn't just a retirement celebration, everyone felt it. The end of an era was about to be made official, and no one, not the board, not the department heads, not even Melissa Vance, knew how it would end. Jada Norwood stood at the back again, not because she had to, but because she chose to. It was her favorite spot, the place she'd watched every major company announcement from for the last 18 years. She didn't need to be in the front row to know what was happening. She'd been in the front row of this company every day, just from a different angle. She wore a deep plum dress, elegant, sharp, the kind of fabric that didn't blend into anything, and for once, she didn't try to hide the confidence in her eyes. Alyssa was beside her, eyes wide. Her daughter had taken the morning train up from college like Jada asked. No questions, just a soft, "Okay, Mom," and a promise to be there on time. "Who's that?" Elisa whispered, pointing to the stage where Richard's assistant was adjusting the mic. "Janine," Jada said. "She's worked for Richard since before I got here." She looks nervous. She's never had to announce something this big before. The crowd started to quiet as Richard Ellison appeared from the side entrance, walking with that familiar, measured pace. His silver hair gleamed under the lights, and his navy suit hugged his frame like an old friend. A few scattered claps turned into a slow-building applause. He reached the podium and raised one hand. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you all for being here. This company has been my home, my life, and frankly, my second family for nearly 40 years. And today, it's time to pass the torch." Melissa sat front row center. Her smile was tight, polished, but if you looked closely, her knee was bouncing just slightly under her skirt. Jada saw it. "Many of you assumed," Richard continued, "that today would be predictable, that I would name a successor who's followed a conventional path. But Halston Co. didn't get to where it is by doing what was expected." A murmur rippled through the room. Melissa's hands froze mid-clap. Richard smiled. Not a warm smile, a knowing one. "I've been watching," he said. "Not just profits, not just forecasts, but people. I've watched who listens, who lifts others, who innovates in silence when no one's watching. And today, I want to acknowledge someone who's done just that." He turned slightly toward the side of the stage. "Jada Norwood, would you join me up here?" The silence was instant, like someone had yanked the plug out of the sound system and drained the whole room of breath. Jada didn't move at first. Elisa touched her hand. "Mum." Jada exhaled, then walked. No rush, no hesitation. Her heels tapped across the marble floor like punctuation. Every step was steady, echoing into the hearts of people who had never even noticed her walk before. Melissa didn't turn around. Couldn't. Richard greeted Jada at the podium with a nod, stepping slightly to the side. 18 years, he said. That's how long this woman has sat at the front desk, managing not just calls and calendars, but, quietly, managing systems, observing inefficiencies, solving problems without asking for recognition. Someone coughed in the audience. A man in accounting dropped his phone. Jada stood with her back straight, hands calmly clasped in front of her. She offered ideas that saved us thousands. She flagged vendor corruption before it became a scandal. She mentored junior staff who didn't even realize she was mentoring them. She did it all while being called just the receptionist. More murmurs, louder this time. No one even tried to hide their shock anymore. Richard turned to her fully. And now I'd like to do something I'd been planning for years. I'm not just announcing my retirement. I'm announcing my successor. He reached under the velvet drape and pulled off the cover with a firm tug. A plaque, gold letters engraved deep and bold. Jada Norwood, Chief Executive Officer, Halston Co. Gasps. Audible, uncontrolled. Even Melissa let out a short, involuntary sound, like a breath punched from her lungs. Richard handed Jada the plaque, then the mic. She stared out at the crowd. Her crowd now. I know what some of you are thinking, she began, her voice clear, calm, steady as stone. How does the receptionist become the CEO? Dead quiet. For 18 years, I've heard every version of that thought, whether said to my face or not. I've seen the looks, I've felt the dismissals. I've been the first person to arrive and the last to leave. I've taken notes in my head while you held meetings around me. I've read the numbers you forgot to proof. I've memorized the way this company breathes. She paused. And now, I'm here to help it evolve. The silence held. Then, slowly, a clap. It started in the back. Turl. Then another. Then a few more. And before long, the atrium erupted into a standing ovation. Genuine, stunned, undeniable. Melissa remained seated, eyes forward, jaw clenched, applause washing over her like cold rain. Richard took the mic once more. "Let this be a reminder," he said. "Titles mean nothing without substance. And talent, no matter where it's hiding, deserves to rise." He looked at Jada and smiled for real this time. "You're going to take this company places I never could." As the crowd began to gather, press forward, shake hands, and offer hugs, Jada leaned close to her daughter. "You okay?" she asked. Lisa's eyes were glassy, her smile wide. "I've never been prouder," she whispered. They stood together on that stage, mother and daughter, past and future. And for the first time in her life, Jada Norwood wasn't waiting behind a desk. She was the desk. The door. The room. The company. And she had just unlocked a new chapter for every unseen voice behind glass walls. The new nameplate was already mounted by Monday morning. Jada Norwood, Chief Executive Officer. The brushed brass lettering shimmered in the morning light, catching every pair of eyes that passed by the executive suite. And still, despite everything, some employees paused, like they weren't sure they were reading it right. Inside the office, Jada stood near the window, the skyline spread wide in front of her. She had barely touched the sleek glass desk, hadn't even sat in the chair yet. Instead, she just breathed. Deep, grounded, steady. 18 years. 18 years of pretending not to notice when ideas were stolen. 18 years of pretending not to hear when voices dropped in volume the moment she walked past. 18 years of watching interns promoted over her, of congratulating others while holding back brilliance behind polite smile. And now, there it was, her name, in metal, permanent. Terrell walked in without knocking. "Old habits die hard. You settling in?" Jada turned, grinning. "Trying not to redecorate everything in the first hour?" He held up a mug. "I figured I'd bring you coffee before anyone else starts demanding your attention." She took the mug. Looked down. CEO fuel. Jada chuckled softly. "You made this?" "Ordered it last night, overnight shipping, worth every penny." She walked to the desk and finally sat. The chair adjusted automatically, contouring to her frame like it knew who she was, like even the furniture had been waiting for her. "You know," she said, wrapping both hands around the mug, "I used to bring Richard his coffee." Terrell raised a brow. "And now you're drinking yours from a cup with your title on it. That's what we call poetic justice." She nodded slowly, then looked up. "Terrell, how do you think people are going to take this?" "You mean besides the ones already scrambling to rewrite their resumes?" She laughed, but her eyes didn't lose their sharpness. "I mean it. Really. People aren't used to seeing someone like me where I'm sitting." Terrell shrugged. "Then let them get used to it." He leaned on the desk, eyes steady. "You earned this, Jay, piece by piece. Day by day, you worked harder than most people even realized. You stayed kind. You stayed real. You didn't have to change who you were to make it to the top. And now that you're here, don't start." Jada smiled, but it held something deeper. Gratitude, sure, but also a fierce sort of clarity. "I don't plan to." Later that afternoon, she walked the floors. No assistants trailing behind, no clipboard, no cameras. Just Jada. A few department heads looked up, startled. A couple execs stiffened. Some pretended not to notice her altogether, suddenly very interested in their laptops. But others, more than she expected, smiled. Some even stood. "Morning, Miss Norwood," someone said softly, near HR. She turned. It was Amina, one of the newer hires, barely out of college. Jada stopped and walked over. "Morning, Amina. Settling in?" "Yes, ma'am." Jada grinned. "Don't call me ma'am. You'll make me feel like I need a cane." Amina giggled. "Yes, sorry. I mean, yes, Jada." "That's better." They shared a warm glance. Amina's eyes sparkled with something unspoken. Possibility. Relief. Afterward, Jada visited departments that hadn't seen a senior executive in years. The mailroom, facilities, the call center. At each stop, she asked one question. What do you need that you're not getting? No board member had ever asked that. And word traveled fast. By the end of the day, Jada was trending on social media. Receptionist to CEO. Jada Norwood effect. Rewrite the rules. News outlets were calling, podcasts wanted interviews, business magazines requested photo shoots. She ignored most of it. I'm not a symbol, she said to Alyssa that evening on FaceTime. I'm just doing the job I've always done. Just now, people are finally looking. Alyssa smiled. You're both, Mom. A symbol and a CEO, and I hope they keep looking, because what they see, it matters. By the end of the first week, changes started rolling in. Departments once starved for budget suddenly had their voices heard. Terrell was promoted to Director of Systems Innovation, a new position Jada created to bridge the gap between IT and operations, something she'd long believed was causing wasted money and buried ideas. Melissa resigned quietly the following Tuesday. No big announcement, no email blast, just a polite memo citing new opportunities. Jada accepted the resignation without glee, just a nod. She had no time for old grudges. There was too much work ahead, and for the first time it was hers to do. Weeks passed, then months. Jada didn't just sit in her corner office. She rewrote what the office meant. She opened leadership tracks for frontline staff, entry-level employees who were often ignored during promotions, created mentorship circles, paired interns with execs, gave quiet thinkers space to be heard. She didn't run the company like a queen. She ran it like a gardener, planting seeds in the people everyone else had overlooked. One day, as summer sunlight spilled across the office floors, Jada stood outside the elevator, waiting. Next to her stood Carmen, a middle-aged Latino woman from custodial who had always nodded shyly in passing. They exchanged smiles. Jada glanced down at Carmen's name badge. You've been here, 10 years? 11, Carmen said. Next month. Happy early anniversary, Jada said. Carmen hesitated, then cleared her throat. I just wanted to say thank you for seeing us. Jada turned fully to face her. I was you, she said, and I still am you. Titles don't erase that. The elevator doors opened. They stepped in together. Two women. Two different uniforms. One direction. Up. When the elevator reached the executive floor, Carmen smiled, eyes glinting. You changed everything. Jada looked back as the doors closed. No, she said. I just reminded them who was everything. And as the doors slid shut, sealing away the old world and lifting her into the new, Jada Norwood knew one thing for sure. She wasn't just in the building anymore. She was the blueprint.